Hi, I'm Paul Feiner, Greenburgh Town Supervisor.
I'm Pauline Mosley. Welcome.
And we have a really interesting program. When we started this series, Solving Problems, we thought we'd be spending all our time focusing on town issues and problems, and we sort of got a little diverted and have been doing a lot of different issues. But today our guest is Aaron Schmidt. He's Deputy Commissioner of Planning for the town, and we're going to learn a lot about trees and some of the town policies and bamboos legislation, and help people navigate the system. So thank you, Aaron, for joining us.
Thank you for having me here this morning. I appreciate it.
Maybe you could start by just telling us a little bit about yourself for people who may not be aware.
Sure. So I actually was talking to Pauline about this just before the show. So I started way back in 1999 at Old Town Hall. I was an intern under Steve Lopez in the planning department. That's when I first cut my teeth with the town. And I've moved up the ladder over the years. I've been deputy commissioner for the last 10 years. And I was our forestry officer for a period of time before that. I am an ISA certified arborist, and I'm currently filling that role because our prior forestry officer retired, Mr. Hoger, who I believe was on the program a few months ago. So I'm filling in. I've been with the town for a long time. We've done a lot of good things here, and I'm excited to give some information to our residents and interested folks.
Well, it shows that the internship program has real value because that program motivated you to want to work for the town.
Correct.
So I'm really pleased with that. I had a question. A lot of people love trees. And could you tell us a little bit about some of the rules and regulations? There's some people who also don't love trees and they want to cut them down. If somebody has a tree in their backyard and every time there's a storm they see the tree moving a little bit and they get panicky, could they just call a landscaper and get the tree removed?
Right. So what I recommend is that people on a regular basis have a professional arborist inspect the trees on the property. We've obviously are having more severe storms. There's concern about trees either toppling over or big branches falling, taking out power lines, injuring children, falling on houses. So it's good to have your trees inspected, ideally on an annual basis. There's a little bit of cost there, obviously, but it can protect you in the future and your loved ones. So we recommend that first and foremost. If you have had your trees inspected, and the recommendation, and again, I'm talking about inspection by a professional arborist because they have the training, experience, and they have to do continuing education to maintain their license. So they're true professionals. Your landscaper, obviously, if there's a branch broken or something like that, can easily point something like that out. But an arborist is going to be able to do a more thorough inspection of the tree to see, are there carpenter ants eating away at the inside of the tree that you might not see on the outside just looking at it. If that professional makes a recommendation that this tree should come down, that's something that we take. They put together a written assessment, and that's something that we accept as part of an application for removal, and through that we will issue the tree removal permit. If a tree's swaying around in the wind, and you hear it and you're nervous, or it drops acorns. I have some large oak trees that overhang my condominium unit, and you hear them blowing around in the wind and the acorns hitting the roof, and it can be nerve-wracking. But that doesn't mean that the tree's unhealthy or structurally unstable. And that's what's important with having that inspection that I mentioned.
So let's say the arborist says the tree is healthy, and I look out on my window, and every time there's a storm, I'm in a state of panic.
Right.
And my whole family is panicking. Could I remove the tree, or if it's on my property?
Right. So you would have to go through the application process. While we would speak to that homeowner or that property owner about the benefits that trees provide. We would also understand, concerns about the tree itself. And that's why, again, we rely on the arborist. The arborist is the professional, much like a mechanic.
Right.
I don't know much about vehicles. I took my car in this morning and they said, you need new brakes. And I agreed with them and let them do their service. We rely on those professionals, but we will have a conversation with that property owner. And if they really feel strongly that there's a significant concern and there's a target, that's important. So if the house is a target, or a children's play set is a target, or a pool is a target, that all gets taken into consideration in the process. Where we go from there, if the permit application is accepted and approved, what we then have a conversation about is, okay, new plantings, planting that next generation of trees.
Is that a requirement?
It is. It is under the code.
So if I want to cut down a tree, then there's a requirement that I plant another tree.
There is. The only two instances where there's not a requirement is if you're removing an invasive species of tree. So we have invasive species in the town all over in various locations. The primaries are Norway maple tree, black locust, and tree of heaven, also known as ailanthus. Those are the three primary invasive species in the town, and if someone wants to come in and remove those, regardless of their condition, we'll issue the permit because we want those removed anyway. There's no fee to remove those, and there's no replacement requirement.
I'm sorry.
How do we contact the harborist?
Okay.
Is it like, for our residents, so they know where to contact?
Great questions. So you can look online. Obviously, things are easier than in the old days where we thumb through the yellow pages. But there's also a great website, and that's treesaregood.com. I just sent the web link out to an individual, and we can, I can get that out as well to our residents and send it to Paul maybe for an e-blast. You can search by your zip code, and then within a certain radius, and it will list all the available certified arborists in the area along with their contact information.
What's the phone number of your office, by the way? I'm sorry. Should we ask that?
914-989-1530.
And do you have an email?
Sure, treepermit@greenburghny.com.
Could you give us examples when you've denied requests?
So I can think of one offhand where a homeowner was concerned with the tree and thought it was on their property based on where the fence on the property was. Well, not all fences are along property lines. So when we had when we accepted the application, there's a requirement to notify the neighbors. Unless the tree is an extreme hazard, then that can be waived. In notifying the neighbor said that fence is not on the property line. The fence is off the property line, and I think that tree's on the property line. That's why the fence was moved around. And it turned out that it was co-owned. And so in that situation, you needed sign off from both parties. And the other neighbor said, hey, I've had my professional look at this tree. It's not a hazardous condition, and I don't want it removed. And in that case, we didn't approve. The other instance I can think of is on development projects. Sometimes developers want to clear all the land, and start fresh, but there may be important or large stature trees on the property that I'll work with the development team and sometimes our planning board to preserve certain large trees on properties that are significant.
I have a question about developers. Sometimes developers, they want to remove the trees, and they figure if they remove the trees, say, on a weekend when we're not open, they'll get a fine, and it's cheaper for them to get the fine than basically not removing the tree.
Right.
So what happens if what is a penalty for a developer or for residents if somebody just removes it? Once you remove a tree, it basically doesn't come back.
Yeah.
So then you have vacant land. So what happens? Is that something that's a legitimate concern?
Absolutely. So a couple of different instances. If someone takes down a tree over the weekend and it comes to our attention, if they can prove that the tree was an extreme hazard, either through photographs or they had an arborist come out there, then we will accept that after the fact and issue a retroactive permit with no penalty. But if they cannot, in the example that Supervisor Feiner mentioned, a developer just clears the land on the weekend and thinks they're going to get a small fine, that's the great thing about our new tree ordinance, which took effect in 2021. Our old ordinance was a $500 fine, sort of a slap on the wrist, and they'd chalk it up as a cost of doing business. In the new ordinance that was adopted, there are very stiff fines, probably the stiffest in the county.
And what's the
Pay
fines?
up to $10,000 per
wow.
tree. So we take that very seriously. In addition to
Has anybody ever
the
gotten the
fines, I should
10,000
say.
fine?
So not yet. They've been subject to it, and we actually have some active court cases. So there are going to be some stiff fines, and the court has been very good about, supporting the town's code and the fines that we've laid out, and we've worked with the town prosecutor. But in addition to that, and to me a little bit more importantly, is they have to come up with a very robust re-landscaping plan. And an individual is going to come in and seek to remove a tree. The replacement requirement is 90% of the environmental benefits that the tree being removed provides. And there's all calculations that we help homeowners with. But in the event a tree was removed without permission, you have to replace 120% of the values the trees provided. And there's a property in town where they took down a lot of trees, and they're spending a lot of money to put in new landscaping, and they're subject to the fines. So we really take it very seriously.
So what if a homeowner needs a tree to be removed, but they don't have the funds to remove the tree? What does the town do in that case?
So that's a good question. The way we've tried to approach that is by keeping our fees down. Okay, so a lot of communities charge more than we do for the application fee. The town board, when they adopted the new tree ordinance, reduced the fees down to homeowners that are looking to take down 1 to 2 trees per year to only $25 for the permit application fee. So we try and reduce that. The other thing that the town board did in adopting the new tree ordinance is reduce the size of the replacement tree to try and save costs to the homeowner. So you could, although we would like to see people go to landscapers and get professionally, not everyone can afford that. So you could go to a Home Depot and dig the little planting hole yourself and place the new tree in. So that's what we've tried to do.
Yeah, I have another question. Let's say somebody lives near a house owned by somebody, and there's a tree that's owned by somebody else, and you're like really pretty sure that the tree is in jeopardy of coming down, but it's on private property, not the town tree, and the homeowner says, I'm not going to remove it. Does the town have any role enforcing the person to take down, the neighbor to take down a tree?
So the code doesn't give the town the authority to force another property owner to remove the tree. We would have a conversation with that property owner, but what we recommend is if you speak to your neighbor directly and they say, hey, look, not my problem, I'm not concerned about this, then what you want to do is start the paper trail. So you want to prepare a letter with photographs. If you've had your landscaper or arborist take a look at the tree and they're the ones that have recommended, hey, you might want to be concerned about this tree on your neighbor's property, document that. Send them a certified return receipt letter with the documentation. Copy our office on the letter so we have a record of it. Copy your insurance company, because you're putting them on notice about a condition that you're concerned with and that may be a hazard and could cause damage. And if they don't take action, you want to have that paper trail to hold them liable.
And I've also recommended that people write a letter saying these are examples of people being fined like $9 million by courts, or $10 million or 12, because years ago when I first got in office, this was over 30 years ago, there was a tree in the Cotswold section of Edgemont, and it fell and killed somebody, and it was owned by really the Edgemont, the Cotswold Association, but it was on town. So somebody sued. the town. I think somebody got severely injured, like the spouse, and we have to pay $9 million. And there's been other court cases where it's much higher than $9 million all over the country.
Right.
If a tree falls down,
Right.
you could be driving, and if there could be, if it's a town-owned tree, there's liability or state-owned or county-owned. And after that incident, the town now has a maintenance program. Could you tell us a little bit about the maintenance program?
Sure. So while I deal primarily with tree removal from private property, I do work closely with our Department of Public Works and our Department of Parks and Recreation. So in fact, about 5 years ago, the town was awarded a grant to complete a street tree inventory along all town roadways to inventory our street trees. There were over 15,000 trees inventoried by a private professional tree service company. And they identified the condition of those trees, the species, the diameter, and made recommendations. They basically boiled it down to trees that are of high concern, medium concern, and low concern. And the town DPW was very proactive in taking action on all the high risk trees and then moving into the medium and then the low risk. So they were very proactive in that regard.
And Con Ed also clear cuts a lot of trees.
So Con Ed, we did have issues with them many years ago when they started to remove trees from the high tension power lines, and we did work with them on some remediation. We had a program of planting at the Greenburgh Library where there's a demonstration garden where you can plant trees that don't interfere with the overhead wires. There were 12 trees planted there, and we've had them do other remedial planting efforts. But now, from time to time, they'll come in along the roadways and want to remove a tree that could impact the wires. And sometimes the town reaches out to Con Edison and says, hey, we're concerned about this tree, we got a complaint, or we had a drive-by inspection, and they'll come and assist. So, there's been good coordination lately.
That is great. Do we, we are talking about removing trees and getting rid of some trees. Do we have a tree replanting program in the town?
Yes. So part of the new ordinance adopted by the town board includes a town tree fund. So on large properties or large development projects, not only are they paying an application fee, but they're also paying a separate amount into the town tree fund that goes towards replanting within town rights-of-way, town parklands, and other town-owned lands. In fact, we are putting in a submission to the New York Tree Power Program to purchase 25 trees, and as part of that program, they give you one additional tree for every tree you buy. So we're going to have 50 trees coming in to the town this fall for planting on various roadways and other town-owned lands. So we do utilize that.
So
and it's been successful.
Otherwise, we'd have to change the name of Greenburgh because if we keep cutting down the trees, it won't be green. So it would have to be Berg. So that's interesting. Another one of your responsibilities is bamboo legislation. And I remember years ago, I think a gentleman, John Moore, kept saying, we need legislation. And finally, last year, I think about a year ago, we approved the bamboo legislation. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Right. So there are many species of bamboo, some of which are very aggressive. And the concerns were brought about by numerous residents in the town, including Mr. Moore, about the invasive bamboo species invading from the property that it was planted on, invading other properties. It's very difficult to remove, and it can be very aggressive. It can harbor mosquitoes. It can flop over onto the roadways in heavy snow events particularly. So it's something that we want to control. New York State regulates these particular types of bamboo as well. They're not to be sold. So we don't see a lot of new bamboo being planted, but existing bamboo can be very aggressive, and it can crowd out native vegetation and other desired vegetation. So we have that ordinance on the books that if there's aggressive bamboo and there's a complaint, that we have the ability to issue a violation or a violation notice to that property owner and require them to remove it. It's very difficult to remove, though. It's not something where your gardener or landscaper can come in and just cut it to the ground and then that's it. It will grow back from the roots and the rhizomes, and you have to be very
Interesting.
aggressive with it. So we've been successful on some projects and unsuccessful on others. So it's not a perfect science, but there are
So
good
how
resources.
how do they remediate it?
So one way to eliminate it, there are multiple ways. So to eliminate it fully, the best information that I have, and it's actually, there's a YouTube video that I'd perhaps like to get that link out if possible, but the gentleman in the video explains that the bamboo, as it puts out the new shoots, right, it expends energy. And if you cut the shoots at the right time, it'll then try to put up new shoots. And if you then cut it at the right time, it'll end up expending all its energy, and that's how it will die out.
Wow.
Alternatively, and on bigger development sites, you can have it with heavy machinery ripped out of the ground and eliminated that way. There are some chemical treatments that people have used, but they're not fully successful. You have to be as aggressive as the bamboo is.
Yeah, and I remember at the last town board meeting, the former town clerk, Judith Beville, complimented you for following up on it. So she lives near a house
She does.
with bamboos. So
Yes.
what type of initiative would we be taking on that?
So with that, we met with Ms. Beville, and she was happy that we came out there, myself and Commissioner Duquesne. Now, I observed that the bamboo was clearly growing from another property and coming into her property, so we gave her some suggestions. We also want to get the 3 property owners together where it's growing, because taking a coordinated approach, we found, is the best approach
To eliminating it.
than to eliminating it in full. So we do have the property owner, it was issued a violation and they were responsive, so we're all going to get together to try and find a solution that's satisfactory to everyone.
What are some of the other responsibilities of Deputy Commissioner of Planning?
So I staff our planning board. So I work on all development projects that move through the planning board, projects that are referred by the town board to the planning board. And then I'll also assist with certain zoning board matters when there's a project that overlaps between the planning board and the zoning board. We also staff our Conservation Advisory Council, our Historic and Landmarks Preservation Board. I currently staff our Sustainability and Energy Efficiency Committee, which put forth a draft local law on solar energy systems that was adopted by the town board.
And the battery legislation.
The battery legislation was adopted, and we're currently working on electric vehicle charging station legislation.
So what will happen with
Very
electric
busy.
vehicles?
I'm sorry?
What, the electric vehicle charging station, what's your vision for that?
So what we see happening is that certain sites are now looking, rather than having your traditional gasoline service station, they want to put in on properties these electric vehicle charging stations as electric vehicles become more commonplace. And so not only are we seeing applications come in on various shopping center sites, but we just had interest about a vacant property that's available, and they want to put charging stations in a little small retail for coffee, bagels, donuts. And I brought that to the committee's attention, and they're interested in putting forth
That's
legislation.
really very exciting. One of the things that we're going to be doing is
That's
at the
amazing.
town hall and at Veteran Park, we're going to be putting solar canopies for those for cars that are parking, and that should happen, I guess, probably at the town hall, probably next year.
Yeah, I
would
think so.
And the Veteran Park, I'd say probably the year after.
Next couple of years.
Yeah, within
right.
the next. But we approved it, so that's something that I think is really great.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the town wants to lead by example with sustainability initiatives. So
That's wonderful.
we've started to move some of our fleet over to electric vehicles. We have an electrical vehicle charger on site. We want to have some more installed for town fleet. And as Supervisor Feiner mentioned, we have the solar canopies coming. So that's all
That's
exciting.
great. That's very exciting.
Yeah, that is really great. You started out as an intern, and you moved up to deputy commissioner. For a young person who's interested in the field, if they would want to eventually become a deputy commissioner or a commissioner, what would you recommend?
Well, I'd recommend that they do start if they were in the internship program and they liked it, go into that field, continue with it, study the field. If you're in college, take a class or two, perhaps, identify your major or a minor and focus on that. And then continue with it, stick with it, become involved in your community. One of the things that, since I was an intern and then was eventually hired full-time, I got more involved with my community. When I was hired by the town in 1999, I knew an oak tree and a maple tree and maybe a pine tree, but I went for additional schooling to become an arborist. And now I love trees. I plant trees all over the town. A lot of the trees out front in town hall were planted through me, and I take great pride in that. So if you become interested in a particular field or department or what have you, continue with it, focus on it, and go for it, because I'm an example of where you can come in at the lowest level and move your way up.
The deputy commissioner position is not a civil service position, right?
Correct.
But the other jobs before that are civil service, so you have to take a civil service exam?
Yes.
And is that a difficult test?
I think if you aren't well prepared for it, they can be difficult because they will test your body of knowledge. So there are study guides. At the time when I took the test, I got the study guide. They've helped me. And if you study enough and you're interested enough and you ask the right questions, there are people out there that will help you study for these exams. People that are interested in having government workers come in and get you into the field, and they'll assist you. So it definitely can be done, and they're passable.
Well, we're very lucky to have you. You're very passionate about your job and very dedicated, and have always been very, very responsive to the community. So thank you very much. We only have about a minute left, and I'm wondering if there's any final words you'd want to say.
Well, thank you for having me here today. I hope we've given a lot of information to our community members, and I will work to get some photos and or videos available. We'll get the link out that I mentioned to the YouTube video about bamboo control.
Yes.
Because I think that will be helpful to residents that just don't have a sense of what they can do to eliminate it. And we'll also get some more information out on tree care.
Yeah, do you know what would be really good? If you could prepare some easy to understand rules and regulations. So it's if your neighbor has a tree and you're nervous, this is what we can do, this is what we can't do. If you want to cut down a tree, this is
The
steps to take.
Yeah,
This is why you might be denied. This is examples of being accepted. And if you could do that, we could post that periodically on on the website. And I think it would be, I think more people would really appreciate it. I think if it's done in non-legalese, but very easy to understand, I think people would really appreciate it. And I could post it on the website, as often as you do it.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah.
I would.
Wonderful.
I think that would be very helpful to our residents and community members. And then I would close for myself by saying that what's important to me, as I mentioned before, is there are trees that are going to need to come down. Every tree has a lifespan, and we understand that. What I'm focused on is planting the next generation of trees for our kids, our grandchildren, and beyond.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank
Great.
you, Aaron.